All right. So today we are looking, oh Lord, at PFT 120 OPT for youth specific training. Um, so this is another one of our what I like to affectionately refer to as packet classes because there is no official textbook for this class, but I will be sending you guys this manual right here, which is a PDF. It's available for download on Canvas today. I will send it an email today. But you can see it is this manual that basically is your textbook. Like there's no physical copy of this book that exists. At least if there is, it doesn't exist in our realm, not available for purchase. Um, Maybe there's like one printed copy on a bookshelf somewhere. But basically, it's going to go through all the chapters that we have PowerPoints for, and we're going to take you guys through this whole thing. Now, these materials do come, like I always say, they come from NASM, right? So if you go to nasm.org and you go to their, let's see, specializations here, continuing education, special pops, and we see like youth exercise right here, right? So this would be normally $199. It's worth one of your CEUs. So as a NASM, as like a NASM trainer, you got to maintain you got to get 2 CEUs every 2 years, right? So this would get you about halfway there. You could pair this up with some of their other materials or whatever. But basically, this is going to sort of take us through all of the chapters of the youth fitness manual. Now, next mod, we'll be going over the senior manual, which is actually, these used to be sold as a pair. These used to be sold, the senior one and the youth one used to be sold together. And they called it Lifespan Fitness, which I think is what we actually still have the name as in our old version of the senior course. But then you have senior fitness. It is also worth 1.0. So you can see that right there. So if you were to get both of these, which would cost you about $400 altogether, that would recertify you for the 2 years, right? Because that's your 2.0 CEUs. So this is another, like I said, this is another packet class. Last mod we went through the weight loss packet, which was a full 2 CEUs by itself. Next mod we'll go over the senior ones. The mod after that we'll go into the sports one. So we'll be looking at NASM's OPT for sports specific training, and that actual one actually does have a real textbook. That one's like that one's their sort of second most popular, second most prestigious, I guess, certification that they have. So 2 mods away from that one. But anyway, getting back to this class, it is another packet class, and I'll be sending out those packets today. We're going to be looking at how to train kids, who are an awesome population for us to, know how to train, because like that, it is going to open up a lot of doors for us, like business wise. Now, me personally, I'll be honest, like I have worked with kids here and there. I've never really made it like a staple of my career, just because I don't particularly see myself as working that well with kids. Like I'm not incredible with kids. I like working with kids. I think it can be fun, but I think I don't have the ability to change how I talk. I don't have the ability to filter myself. Not that I'm like, dropping F-bombs or anything like that in front of children, but I think that like I just explain things in a way that sometimes is a little bit too complex for most kids. Or like I have a hard time like judging like which age group kids are supposed to be in. So it's never been something that I'm super passionate about, but definitely offers have been there in my career that I've like turned down here and there, where like a parent has been like, hey, would you mind working with like my kid, right? Now that being said, teens are something that I've worked a lot with, right? I feel like once a kid kind of has a little bit more agency and can communicate a little bit better, then I start to have a little bit of an easier time working with them. So teenagers, which is another part of this same population, and the other part of the conversation we're going to have, are also a really effective and really fun population that we can work with. And they're usually, based around trying to improve their athleticism because they're trying to make some sort of team at school, which is a super fun goal to work towards, like as the trainer. So I really recommend like considering this in your careers, even if you don't see yourself as really wanting to work in like a very kid-centric situation, like with children, knowing a little bit about this stuff so that you can work with teens. I think that working with teens can be really, really, really rewarding. Um, so looking at this, right, we're going to have a little bit of a slightly different day by day breakdown for this course. So let's walk you guys through that right now. So we've got day one here. It's going to be, chapters 1 and 2. Day 2. So tomorrow we'll be looking at, what's that? Today's Wednesday? Yeah. Good Lord, pandemic world. It's impossible to know what day it is. Tomorrow we've got the psychological considerations for youth. So that'll be chapter 3. That'll also be our first piece of homework, which will cover, all the PowerPoints and all the chapters up until now. On Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, on Friday, we'll have chapter 4, which will be fitness assessments. That'll be a really fun one. This is going to be fitness assessments for youth, but honestly, guys, it's just like any other fitness assessments class. So we will be going over all of those again, talking about how to break down the overhead squat, how to diagnose posture and things like that, or how to assess posture. We'll be looking at, then we'll start getting into the program design aspects of it. So in the last class, a lot of our program design stuff was kind of jumbled together because that's sort of how the weight loss class works. In this course, they're very much broken down specifically by piece by piece by piece. So what'll be really fun is we're going to have a flexibility day where we go through all of the flexibility guidelines for NASM program design. This will correspond with this youth manual, but it will also correspond with your regular textbook. That's going to be homework 2 as well, which will cover these 2 days. Then we'll have cardio on day 5, where we will go into the movement prep on day 6. So they do one kind of interesting thing in this manual that's slightly different than your regular NASM. You'll see they have core and balance as one chapter, and then reactive is the next chapter, whereas normally, like in your textbook, those reach their own chapters, but those are the 3 aspects of movement prep, right? But in this version, they put plyometric with SAQ training because with kids, they really do kind of blur the line pretty well. So that's a little bit of a slight difference compared to the normal textbook, but we'll be breaking that down both from this version and this perspective. We will also be looking at sort of the normal NASM approach to it. And then on day 7 here, this is probably everybody's favorite day. We'll get into the resistance training. So that's where we'll get into, chest day, leg day, back day, things like that. And then day 8, we are going to do an overall program design. We're going to take all these concepts that we talked about, flexibility, cardio, core, balance, reactive, SAQ, and resistance training. And we're going to put all of them together to write, full on effective programs. Now you'll notice normally that day, the way that this works, right? We usually have like an integrated, we have like all the program design, lecture-y stuff. And then like we end with a lecture the day before the final, and we review on the day of the final. In this class, it's going to be ever so slightly different. So day 9 is all by itself an in-person meeting. There will be no final to do on day 9. It'll just be an in-person meeting because we actually used to do an in-person meeting in this youth class. It was sort of a field trip. Nowadays, everything is a field trip. But it used to be kind of a field trip that we would do. And that's actually how we used to go out to the same park that we go out to now. But we used to go there, once every 6 months, basically, whenever this class would roll around. So we're going to do a really fun day where we put together like a really fun style of working out that works really well with like children versus like teenagers and stuff. So really sports based, really, 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 really fun. We're going to have a blast doing that class. So I'm excited to get to day 9. Then we'll have day 10, where I will have a review video up on YouTube, but we will actually log in for the day of the final in this class, and we'll play a little review game where basically we just get everybody to log in. And we'll sort of play a little competitive version of just going through the homeworks and kind of practicing on this little app called Quizzes. If any of you, I mean, Dalen, I think you're probably, or actually both you guys, actually, yeah, both you guys have been through some other Sochi stuff. So Dalen, Andres, both of you guys are probably familiar with Quizzes or Kahoot. We'll play a little bit of that as our review. So that is sort of where we are headed in terms of the next 10 days. You guys any questions on that? Radio silence?
No, sir. Kahoot is fun.
Kahoot is fun, right?
Kahoots.
I like Quizzes a little bit better just because it has memes built into it. So when you get a question right, you know, you get like a uplifting meme. But yeah, that'll be kind of fun. Hopefully we get good numbers for that. That might be one where like I encourage people to either come to one session or the other that way, because the more people you have playing, the more fun it is, you know, because you get more people to kind of bounce off of. But yeah, I'm super excited. This is going to be our most fun in-person meeting until we get to the sports mod, in which case we have lots of fun again. But this is like my favorite. The in-person meeting that's coming up in the park in a couple weeks is like my favorite one. We're going to basically build a giant obstacle course, not actual in the sense of like, you know, stuff to climb over or anything like that. But it'll be like, you know, go through the speed ladder, then run to this cone, then run to that cone, then back through the speed ladder, then go through this, then jump over the hurdles. And it's just really, 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 really fun. All right. So yeah, that's sort of where we're headed. So let's take a look at chapter 1 here. We're gonna go ahead and work out there. You can see, like I said, this is gonna be a pretty short lesson today. We got 8 slides here, 22 slides on the next one. So 30 is about standard for what we do, but these actually also move really quickly. There's not a lot of content on them. So today, our objectives, we want to understand the terms that identify youth populations. We want to understand the difference between children versus adolescents. We also want to understand the difference between being overweight versus being obese. So we'll go and take a really brief peek at those obesity statistics that we talked about in our last mod. And once we kind of understand all of that, we're going to understand the rationale. It's like, all right, well, yeah, we definitely see kids are not getting healthier, you know, as we move further and further into the future. Unfortunately, you know, we have more and more amazing technology. You think it'd be easier for us to kind of manage our health, but unfortunately, we're actually kind of seeing the exact opposite. So if that is true, we need trainers, you and me, who are trained up and understand how to work with, like, you know, children and adolescents and develop healthy habits that they can carry into adulthood. So looking at the difference here, first definition you're going to get, and this is a classic example of something that makes a great test question. You can spot it right away because it's just like, it's number based. It's one thing versus another thing. It's a clearly defined definition. A youth is going to be defined as someone between the ages of 2 and 19, actually, not 18. It's kind of funny. And even then, like physical maturity, we don't even reach that until we're like, you know, mid to late 20s, depending, you know, usually about like mid 20s, or if you're like a female, or like late 20s if you're a male. That's when you actually fully stop growing. But we're seeing like, you know, children are going to be age. So if youth are 2 to 19, youth is a blanket term describing children and adolescents. Children are going to be ages 2 to 11. And, you know, obviously we're not training 2-year-olds, you know, we're not like, come on, give me 3 more. But we usually start around like age 6 is usually where you'll see like most child-based like group exercise activities and things like that. And then we have adolescents anywhere from age like 12 to 19, right? And I will say one thing here: in your normal textbook, NASM disregards like what they're saying in this specialized textbook, where they say like in your regular text, you'll see it says 12 to 18, which sort of makes a little bit more sense in the world that we are sort of used to living in. But I want to put that note in there in case any of you have read into the special populations chapter, and you've seen that and you're like, that doesn't match up. You're right, it actually doesn't, which sometimes happens with these NASA materials. But I think they're taking it from more of a scientific approach in this version versus more of a like standard approach in the textbook version. So anyway, what you guys need to know, children are 2 to 11, adolescents are 12 to 19. And that's a classic, like I said, these are great test questions because it's just an, that would make an excellent multiple choice question. So, we don't usually include age 2 to 5 kids in research. We usually start research around like age 6 if we're looking at obesity statistics, just because, biologically, children up to 5 are going to fluctuate massively between like different families and stuff. So it's really hard to get like quantitative normalized data. So instead, we're going to look a little bit more from like 2 to 11, or, break it down from like 12 to 19. And even like right in the middle there, like 11 through like 13, that tends to fluctuate a lot too, depending on like hormonally, how like how an adolescent or how a youth is going through puberty. So they're definitely going to respond differently to exercise. Puberty is going to cause like a big difference. We're going to see some specific physiologic differences that are going to happen, in children versus adolescents, particularly in the areas of like temperature control. But it can sometimes make it difficult, because there are so many differences here and there, for youths to maintain healthy body weights, right? Like if parents are, not ensuring that their youths are getting enough activity, or if they're not ensuring that they're eating the right types of foods, and the thing is, like, those types of foods and those activities are going to be different depending on like how their body is physiologically responding to things. So this is a surprisingly complicated population to work with, and it often explains why what we see in terms of obesity, we are definitely seeing more and more and more obesity in regards to like our youth. So when I say obesity, right, here's the thing. Obesity, the BMI ranges are going to actually work exactly. The BMI ranges are going to be different, but the BMI calculation is going to be exactly the same. So BMI, body mass index, by definition, is still going to be a calculation of your height versus your weight in order to determine your body weight, your body composition. So that's going to be your weight in kilograms divided by your height in meters squared, right? And I know you guys have seen that 100,000 times. And what we've also seen 100,000 times, we know that a BMI of less than 18.5 is considered underweight. Anywhere from 18.5 to 24.9 is normal weight. 25 to 29.9 is overweight, and anything greater than 30 is considered obese. Right now, here's the thing. This does not apply to youths. This applies to adults, right? So this is different. And that's why we got this big, I'm gonna make it bold too. We got this big, bold, underline, asterisk, huge thing to remember here. And so when we are considering youths, this is very different. The average table for BMI does not apply. Instead, the formula remains the same, but where they fall into different categories is not determined based on just like flat numbers, 18.5 to 24.9. Instead, they are going to look at the number that you get. Let's say it's 25, right? Which would put someone right at the beginning of the overweight category. But if they are falling within the 5th to 85th percentile, where, most youths that age are also falling at 25, that is considered normal weight. So now we are breaking this down by percentiles instead. So let's take a look at the youth BMI percentile ranges. Oops. Find a picture of this if I can. Yeah, so it's going to look something like this. This is the original one right here. So it's a growth chart, right? We see that like it kind of dips a little bit and then sort of goes. Whereas like if we look at these are very linear, right? That's a straight line. This fluctuates a little bit, right? So if you do find, like we can see here, right? A 10-year-old boy with the BMI of 13 would be in the underweight category, right? So if they had a BMI of 13, that is putting them like underweight, right? But if that same 10-year-old were to suddenly increase their body weight and get their BMI up to 18, right? 18 here is considered underweight by adult standards, right? But an 18 for a 10-year-old is actually right within the 5th to 85th percentile. That puts them at the 18 puts them at the what percentile? Help me out here. Where are my friggin' percentiles on the chart? It's over here, but it's being blocked. Great. Thanks a lot. I guess that's like somewhere around like the 20th area. Or no, I guess I'm sorry, this chart, I guess it goes in the wave. Yeah, it'd be like the 50th percentile. So it's actually not bad. And then we see if a BMI, like a youth had like a BMI of 21, right? 21 for a youth is considered, 21 for an adult is considered normal weight, but for a youth, that is actually putting them in the overweight category. And for if they fall into like a BMI of 23, 23 also puts them in the normal weight category as an adult. But as a youth, that would put them in the above the 95th percentile for youth. So that would be considered obese. So these are all things that we kind of need to consider. I actually remember this happening to me in high school. Our teacher, and she was great. She was a great gym teacher, but she stepped into the realm of like health at one point, this is kind of a swing and a miss. She had everybody calculate their BMI, and she like did this lesson on what the BMI is, which I'm sure was part of like the lesson plan that the state of Oregon had probably sent out. It was like, hey, make sure you're teaching kids to maintain like healthy body weights and stuff. Like, let's talk about this. And so it probably went out to all the gym teachers in the state of Oregon. And yeah, like I remember all of us calculating, and our teacher drew up this version of the chart in class. Like she brought in a whiteboard and all the different BMI ranges. And I remember like falling below in the underweight category. And I was like a skinny teenager and feeling like a little self-conscious about it and being like, man, like sure enough, like I always thought I was skinny, but now I got a freaking hard data to back it up. And I'm not even close. Like I wasn't just like below 18.5. I was like way below 18.5. And I was like, oh my God, that's a real bummer. And chances are, like, if this had been taught properly, and imagine how any of the other kids must have kind of similarly felt in there. Kids are often very self-conscious about their weights and stuff, and their appearances. And yeah, imagine like that kind of screwed everybody's brain up a little bit, but here we see, right, that would have been actually probably a very normal percentile for that age. But I remember that happening in gym, and I remember like a lot of like the girls in my class being really upset, and boys too. And it was like this really weird, eye-opening thing, and it never was addressed. It never came back up. We never learned like the correct version. I love that teacher, by the way. I think she's still there actually, and doing a good job. But like, that's what happens when you don't consider that it's on a sliding scale. So make sure if you are calculating the BMI of like a youth, make sure you use this sliding scale. You can find this, by the way, you're going to have access to it in the manual. I think you'll see it in the programming manual actually, which is the second one I'm going to send you. Oh no, I guess it is in the regular. So you'll find this sliding scale in there. Seriously? Did I just move too fast? Or I just missed it. It's at the bottom? Oh, it's at the bottom. So there it is. You'll find this in your book. So you can help your youths sort of chart that out. All right, let's take a look next at some of our obesity data. So we do know, like I said, we are seeing more and more youths become obese. In 2007 through like 2008, we had about 20% of the youth population was obese. And we're talking obese here, right? We're not talking overweight, right? We're skipping the overweight category. We know a lot of people and a lot of youths are overweight, but particularly like 20% were obese back in 2008. Nowadays, that's closer to 40%. And we're reaching even higher levels every single year, right? I can't imagine what's going to happen after a year of being indoors. It's going to be bad. Versus like the 1970s when we're seeing like 5% of the population, right? So 5 up to 20, and now all the way up to 40 or possibly even higher at this point. So we are definitely seeing like obesity statistics increase. I know I already looked this up once with you guys. But if we go to like the stateofobesity.org, which actually tracks these statistics, and we look at this data, let's take a look at just 10 to 17-year-olds, right? So we're going to look at teens for the most part, adolescents. We see currently, and this is obesity rates, right? So this is not overweight. This is just looking at obesity statistics, right? So we are seeing, if we're seeing yellow, that is 20 to 25% of the population. If we're seeing green, that's 15 to 20%. Dark blue is actually below 10%. And then, I don't know, what is that, turquoise? Up to 15. So we're seeing in places like Kentucky, 23% of the population, Mississippi, 22% of the population. Yeah, a little bit different down here. Utah is doing great. Minnesota is doing great. But like, we know that these statistics are climbing, but this was, let's see, what year was this? 2018 through 2019. Let's go back to 2016. So if we click that and just change it, you can see Mississippi was riding the struggle bus, but we see a lot more, dark blues on here than we did before. We see a lot of teals on here. We're mostly landing in the green category rather than landing in that yellow category. That's kind of interesting. Why the heck is that? Their chart's broken. This should be above this. Let's go. Can we go back any further? Nope, that's all we got. All right, so we definitely see these statistics like climbing, unfortunately, in really sort of negative ways, right? And the same thing is true for 2 to 4-year-olds, we also see like ages 2 to 4, right? You can see here's the statistics currently. If we go back to like 2004, did those statistics change? Wow, actually also does not look great. So it's 2016. And let's go back to 2004. Yeah, that's a little better. Although some of these are worse, like you got Alaska and Illinois not doing exactly great, but it's a little bit better. Back in 2000, yeah, pretty much nothing but teal and lots of light blue, and we got no yellows, right? So we definitely know these, again, their chart's busted. We definitely see these rates are on the climb, right? So what the heck's happening? Why is this the case? Well, obviously the causes for obesity are really complex. But generally, what we think is we see a decline in physical activity is a huge indicator. There's just a lot more cool stuff on the internet. Now we got smartphones. There's a lot of cool stuff on those. We can spend our time not doing physical activity. We can spend our time being, relaxed and just sitting and sedentary, right? So that's definitely not helping us. And we see like poor nutrition as well. We see like we have a lot more access to unhealthy foods. The access to healthy foods that we have is rather limited, or at least not as convenient, right? There's not as many convenient, healthy options. And then we also see like an increased reliance on technology. So this kind of goes in with like the decline in physical activity. I think decline in physical activity is where we see like, there are just more positive barriers in the way of like physical activity. Remember, positive barriers are barriers that pull you away from something healthier, right? There's something fun that pull you away, right? And negative barriers are something that's unpleasant that keep you from attempting something. Well, we look at like physical activity, the the negative barriers that are there, like the discomfort of exercise, right? You're hot, you're sweaty, right? And then we look at like the, positive barriers. We got YouTube and video games and things like that, right? So that's like pulling us in directions of unhealthy behaviors. And then we see a reliance on technology as well. I mean, like it's easy for you to just throw your laundry in, hit a start button and then walk away, right? You can throw stuff into the dishwasher, hit a start button, walk away. Back in the day, we didn't have access to all that. And so, when we're talking about how many calories those activities burn, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it adds up over the course of a lifetime. So that is what we sometimes think, right? But like I said, we are seeing high school students, 1 in 5 are active for about an hour a day. So that's about 20% of the population are doing something physically active for an hour every day. But we're seeing 1 in 3, so that's about 30% of the population, are watching 3 or more hours of television daily. And 1 in 4, so that's about 25% of the population, are using the computer for 3 or more hours daily. And I would argue that a lot of these statistics are much, much higher now. These stats are actually coming out of like 2015, I think. So we're like 6 years out of that. I'll bet these are much, much higher at this point. So that's definitely some of the things that are likely the cause, and that's the rationale for having specific certifications for like youth training, right? If we know these statistics and we know how to work with kids, we can start combating them, right? So remember your differences between children and adolescents. Remember your differences between overweight, obesity, overweight, normal weight, and underweight. So before I told you guys you needed to get these percentile ranges memorized. Sorry, not percentile ranges, just flat number ranges. You need to get these number ranges memorized. In this course, you're going to want to be familiar with your percentiles. So under 5th is underweight, above 85 to 95 is overweight, and then anything above 95 is obese. And anything from 5 to 85 is in the normal category. Why are these on the climb? Increased reliance on technology, poor nutrition levels, and lower activity levels, right? Positive and negative barriers. So any questions there? You guys feeling good? Dalen, Andres?
Yes, sir.
All righty. Yeah, there's not many questions in that first part. It's just like, we're in trouble, help. What's that, Dalen?
No, I was just laughing. I know that when you talking about obesity, you don't see as many kids as active as when I was younger and we were always out playing basketball or just out.
Yeah.
So I think more
right?
kids are indoors playing video games and snacking. And
Dude, I mean, I was part of that. Dude, when I was a kid, I can't believe that I didn't. I mean, this is where like genetic metabolism is definitely coming into play here. And when I say genetics, again, I want to like, there's so many different parts to genetics. Like some people think it's just like, oh, you just passively burn more calories, like your cells run faster. And it's like, no, that's not really what I mean when I say like metabolism sometimes. I think genetically also and biologically, I come from a line of bouncy people. And I think sometimes that explains people's metabolisms. We all know that fidgeter, right? That person who's just never comfortable in their chair. They're sitting on one side and then a couple seconds later they're sitting on the other. Those little things actually really do add up. We call that NEAT. That's your non-exercise activity. And so like, you know, I think that like a lot of that could probably explain what I'm about to say. But like when I was in high school, my parents were very cool about letting me have like friends over to my place all the time. I actually had a door on my bedroom that led to the outside because we rented this what used to be military, it used to be Coast Guard housing, like from like the 50s. And then it got bought by an apartment complex and became these little duplexes and stuff. So we had like, and because of that, because it was like military style, they had doors that would lead straight to the outside on the bedrooms. It's kind of weird. It was a very weird thing, but I used to leave mine cracked and I would just come home and my friends would be in my room. And I'd be like, you guys couldn't have given me a ride. I took the bus. You know, that happened constantly, by the way. But I had like a little mini fridge in my room that was constantly stocked with like Mountain Dew Live Wire. And then like we had like, you know, Chex Mix and candy, like all this like junk food, just constantly like floating around my house and stuff. And we would sit around and, you know, do these video game parties till like 4 a.m, you know, and like that's the youth of today, you know, like I'm outside of that substantially by this point, but like if that was happening if I had access to that, I can't imagine what, youths have access to nowadays. And even unhealthier foods, just soda and chips and junk. So, we also used to play ultimate frisbee, but that was other days. All right. Halo LAN parties. Let's take a look at chapter 2 here. Introduction, right? So today we're going to be, so in this lesson, we're going to be looking at the anatomic and physiologic differences between youths versus adults, right? Because obviously there are some pretty substantial ones. So, we want to understand how like hormonal changes are going to be very different and what implications those are going to have. And we understand a lot like the capabilities. I mean, like kids are going to have a different capacity compared to adults when it comes to certain types of exercise. So youths are going to differ from adults in like a lot of different ways, right? But some of the most important ones that we want to remember, there are definitely like some neural adaptations here. There are definitely some muscle mass adaptations, and there's flexibility adaptations. All of those things are a little bit different, right? And then one thing that's not mentioned here, but it'll be mentioned a little bit later, we'll talk about how there are aerobic versus anaerobic capabilities. Kids suck at anaerobic exercise. They just do not have the energy system, the fuel system necessary to fuel anaerobic metabolism. Aerobic metabolism, they're great at, right? So hormone levels, attention spans, body size, all those things are definitely going to have an impact. So this doesn't mean that you can't apply the OPT model. The OPT model here, stabilization, strength, and power, phases 1 through 5, those still absolutely apply to kids, right? We can absolutely apply these to our youths. However, based on some of these capacities that youths will have, we got to make some differences, right? I just said youths don't have a very good anaerobic capacity. So that means that like hypertrophy, max strength, and the really heavy parts of power really are just not going to apply very well to youths, right? You could do them, but you're getting that classic problem of like being a jack of all trades and a master of none situation, right? It's like they'd be a little good at it, but like they're not making the same progress they should be during that phase, right? Meanwhile, like they're getting a little good at this, but they're not getting as good as they should be, right? Like they're just seeing like being pulled a little bit in too many different directions. So being specific, youths, for the most part, we're going to spend most of our time in phase 1, which is very aerobic. Phase 2, which is also very aerobic. And then we're going to make some modifications so that we can use phase 5 in a very aerobic capacity. Now, once you've got like a teenager who, starts to develop more of an anaerobic energy system, then you can start applying these other phases of the OPT model. So let's take a look here, right? When we talk about the idea of like muscular strength, it's, we define, how do we define strength? Strength is defined as the ability to recruit internal tension in order to overcome an external stimulus, right? So if I've got my phone here, right? If I generate, I don't know, this weighs like what, a half pound, maybe less, right? So if I recruit like, internal tension in my rotator cuff for more than 1/2 pound, I'm going to be able to, pull it against the resistance that is gravity, right? If it was a resistance band, right, I'd be able to pull against that. But that's what strength is, right? You recruiting in developing tension to overcome some sort of like external stimulus. Now in youths, it's not that they cannot develop strength. They can absolutely develop strength, but they develop it very differently than how we normally see it in adults, right? For the most part, and like I said, youths will get stronger, right? Neural adaptations are going to be the primary source of their strength gains. So they are going to draw stronger connections between their nervous system and their muscular system. So their brain will create very strong synaptic connections that will work really well with our youths, right? We'll see them get stronger that way. But in terms of like growing their muscles and like experiencing like hypertrophy and like hypertrophic growth, that's pretty rare amongst youth. They just don't have like testosterone necessary. They don't have these anabolic hormones necessary to experience like massive amounts of muscular growth. Now, that being said, I'm sure you guys have heard plenty of stories where youths have done this. You know, there's that kid, Hercules. Um, you know, this kid, when he was a little kid, his parents were really into bodybuilding, and they got him like strength training like crazy. You know, kid's got a better six pack than I do. You know, and sure, that can be fine. Like he grew up. A lot of people, there's a lot of rumors surrounding this kid, and it's like he grew up unhealthy and had like all kinds of joint problems. Totally not true, by the way. He grew up just fine. He's still incredibly strong, by the way, because like nervous system wise, the kid was developed, right? So you'll see stuff like that. It's not that you can't experience hypertrophy, it's just very, very difficult. So the amount of effort to put into experience hypertrophic growth is way higher in a youth than the amount of effort that you'd have to put into like an adult, right? And hypertrophy is already pretty hard for some people, so you know this is pretty rare in our youths. So again, they'll get stronger, not because their muscles are growing, but because their nervous system is developing, right? So they'll see strength gains, like I said. Muscle mass adaptations, these are pretty linear. For the most part, like there is going to be some muscular growth, obviously, like just a child is growing up, right? They're going to experience muscular growth. For the most part, in terms of muscle mass, this is pretty linear between boys and girls until about puberty. So it's pretty much a straight line in terms of like, you know, maybe this many pounds of muscle per year. And it just kind of stays the same for boys and girls, actually. There's very much not there's not a very big difference between the two in terms of growth until you hit puberty. And then suddenly we see certain hormonal changes. Girls start developing more estrogen, boys start developing testosterone. Testosterone is an incredibly anabolic hormone. So what that causes is rapid muscular and hypertrophic growth. So we see boys at testosterone will result in larger growth of muscle in like our male youths. And this is where suddenly we start to develop more of an anaerobic energy system. And we start to sort of pivot into maybe implementing a little bit more hypertrophy workouts, a little bit more max strength workouts, you know, with our teenagers, right? That's still something you want to build up to. And that's also something that you want to be cautious with, because as they are teenagers, and they're experiencing like massive growth spurts, which we're going to get into in just a minute. Growth spurts can alter your coordination. So, you know, we don't want to be lifting super heavy and have a body that we're having trouble like controlling, because like our limbs are just a little bit longer than our brain has proprioception for. So we do have to be aware of that. But I'll get to that in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. We also have muscle and joint flexibility differences, right? It's going to decrease as we get older. Youths are extremely flexible. There is a lot of space between the joints, and those joints are, for the most part, very cartilaginous rather than being like hard bone tissue, which means that there's a little bit more room for mobility. So with youths, our mobility is extremely, extremely, extremely high. As our age increases, that flexibility decreases. I mean, everybody in this call, we all know it, right? I hit my 30s and all of a sudden I'm like, touch the toes, you know. But flexibility does decrease as we get older, right? We're going to talk more about this in our senior class next mod. But you know, when we're designing that, our goal when we're choosing stretching techniques, we want to encourage our youths to try to maintain that flexibility into adulthood through like normal stretching routines, you know, getting familiar with those exercises. And, you know, when I'm talking about training like teenagers, sometimes like your teens are really passionate about like getting their gains, you know, getting that heavy lifting going. But there's so many times where I'm encouraging them, like, trust me, man, like you want to maintain this flexibility because you're going to rapidly lose it over the next 5 years. If you can maintain it, it's going to last you into adulthood. So when we're choosing stretching techniques, we generally want to focus the most on static stretches and dynamic stretches. So this is kind of interesting. We're seeing that we are skipping active isolated stretches. Now, it's not that you can't do active isolated stretches with your use. You know, these are the type of stretches we were doing yesterday in the park. we want to do, but we generally want to focus more on either long duration static holds, which are great for improving mobility, or we want to do like, dynamic stretches where we move through a full range of motion, because those are simply taking advantage of a very mobile body. They aren't necessarily a great way to improve flexibility, but they can help maintain it. The reason we don't do active isolated stretches is because active isolated stretches kind of rely on a strong concentric contraction from the antagonist muscle. So if I'm trying to stretch my hamstring, I need a strong contraction from my quad to, effectively pull the hamstring into enough length. And because youths are not very anaerobic and they don't have like a high capacity for strength, right? Those contractions that they can make just aren't enough to really draw through like a full range of motion in some cases. Again, with my teens, I think that rule totally changes. I treat my teens pretty similarly to how I treat adults, but I will often focus on a lot of static stretches and, work them through to their others. So other things that are going to be different, just in terms of like bodily changes, we are going to experience growth spurts, right? Growth spurts are so frustrating, but growth spurts are, where suddenly, a kid goes away for the summer and comes back like, a foot taller. These rapid, rapid hormonal changes, rapid growth patterns that experience, that all kids are going to experience, by the way. Like this is, this isn't boys, this isn't girls. It tends to be a little more dramatic in boys, I think, is what we think. But like, it's happening in all of our different youths, right? So growth spurts are going to cause obviously like big changes in terms of like your body. So that is going to alter your body coordination pretty substantially, right? Remember what proprioception is, guys, right? Proprioception is your body's ability to know where it is in space. My brain knows that my humerus here is what? About I don't know, maybe a foot and a half long, no, foot and a quarter long, I gotta take a picture. Let's find out. Where's the dang thing? I haven't brought a client over to my place in forever. Let's see here. What is that? Where to go from there to there? To the bicep? 13 inches, right? So not even a quarter, a foot and 12 and a 12th, right? So if I all of a sudden went through like a growth spurt and that grew by, let's say, 2 inches, right? My brain is still running on the information that it had previously, right? I developed all of my coordination to know how to move a 13-inch humerus, not a 15-inch one, right? So if that happens, that's going to be a substantial difference, right? So then coordination is going to fall through the floor. So we need to build up that proprioception. We need to build up that coordination again. This is why revisiting the stabilization part of the OPT model is so important when we are training, youths in general, children all the way through adolescence. We want to make sure that we are continually revisiting the stabilization phase, because the stabilization phase is the best phase at developing proprioception. It is slow. It's a large number of repetitions, so you're getting repeated exposure. And they're performed in unstable environments, which means you get all that wobbling that we end up doing, which gives your brain information from here, all these awkward ranges of motion that we're moving through. So body coordination is definitely a big thing that we see here. We see body composition changes. A lot of times the amount of energy that it takes to, create a growth spurt ends up burning a lot through energy. So you could have somebody who is very muscular, and then 6 months later, they burn through all that muscle because, they go through like a growth spurt or something. Or maybe they were in like an overweight category and they burn through all of that, to fuel this anabolic growth spurt, right? And then, like I said, we are going to see like flexibility changes. Growth spurts do cause like massive stretching of not only bones, but muscle tissue and connective tissue and stuff. And so that can alter flexibility, leading to decreased flexibility. Think about like the muscles that you've got. If all of a sudden they just got pulled this much further away, they are going to want to pull back in the opposite direction. So girls are going to experience growth spurts a lot earlier than boys are. They mature a little bit earlier than boys do. So we need to be aware of that. And then, this is all going to be caused by like these massive changes in hormones, right? We're going to see growth spurts being affected by like the onset of puberty, where we see a massive production of HGH hormone, or human growth hormone. We see a massive production of testosterone in boys, and we see a massive production of estrogen in girls. So all of those hormones are definitely going to cause massive bodily changes, right? So that is definitely one thing that we need to keep an eye on. Another one we got to talk about are our cardiorespiratory differences. And by the way, when I say keep an eye on this, I don't mean like, let's say you're working with like a kid and then all of a sudden they start going through puberty, you're going to have to like make adjustments. That is true. So that could happen. But I mean, like if you have like, let's say like a 14-year-old kid or a 14-year-old teen that like, their parents approach you and it's like, hey, we want you to start training our 14-year-old son or daughter. You should be aware of the fact that like if they have trouble with coordination, they probably recently experienced some type of growth spurt. So that can lead to awkward, bodily movements and stuff. Cardio differences. This is a big one, actually. So cardio differences. So because youths have a smaller heart, they are going to have a higher heart rate and a lower stroke volume. Remember, stroke volume is how much blood is being pumped out of the heart every time your heart beats, right? So youths have smaller hearts, resulting in an increased overall heart rate and a lower stroke volume. So the heart rate, number of beats per minute, stroke volume, amount of blood pumped per beat. So that means because of that higher heart rate and lower stroke volume, what do youths have? They have a lower cardiac output, the amount of overall blood that is being pumped out of the heart per beat. This is also why your cat and your dog have a higher heart rate than you do. So that is the cardiac output, heart rate times stroke volume there. Youths are going to have, that's going to result in lower cardiac output. Now, as they start to get older, the left ventricle is going to grow because the overall size of the entire heart is going to grow. So that left chamber, which is the one that's pumping blood everywhere, right? That's going to get larger, right? And that's going to increase the stroke volume, thereby decreasing the heart rate and increasing performance. As we see that, right, left ventricle grows, heart rate decreases, stroke volume increases, right? So in comparison with adults, most youths are going to have about half of the blood, half of the stroke volume that like an adult is going to have. Their heart is much, much smaller. So it just has to get the same amount of work done in way, way, way more beats. They're also going to have lower amounts of blood pressure, and they are going to have lower overall cardiac output, like I said. Now, here's the thing. They have a smaller heart. But what's interesting is they have, actually, I guess I'm not getting to that till later. Sorry. One thing that youths do have over adults that's a little bit different is youths have the ability to actually extract more oxygen from their blood than adults do. So in order to compensate for the lower amount of blood that's being pumped out per beat, as a youth, there is more type 1 muscle fibers, and there is a higher density of mitochondria. And that higher density of mitochondria means that like the amount of oxygen that's being extracted from those red blood cells is actually a little bit higher. And so this makes youths really, really good at aerobic exercise. So they're going to have a higher, what we call absolute VO2 max, where basically they're going to have a much higher ceiling, but it is also like a very hard ceiling. The ability to improve with youths is actually a little bit lower because their natural capacity is a little bit higher, which is interesting. So because of that, youths have a really, really great aerobic energy potential, right? Their ability to do aerobic exercise is awesome. So we love cardio with our youths, right? They are excellent at using oxygen, and they are able to consume way, way more of this. However, because of that, they're pretty much only good at that one thing. That's it, right? They're really good at the aerobic exercise, but they kind of suck at everything else. That is what we refer to as a metabolic non-specialist, right? You know, that again, like they're not really that great. They're kind of just good at this one particular thing, right? So because of that, we definitely want to, you know, be cautious about giving our youths, like, you know, this is why we are avoiding the max strength. This is why we're avoiding the hypertrophy ranges of lifting. We're for the most part staying in the endurance side of stuff. And then one other big thing that is a very big difference here is youths have a very, very hard time with thermoregulation. Okay, so kids are particularly bad at maintaining their body temperature because they just don't have, they have like a lower blood volume compared to like the amount of surface area that's being exposed to the environment, right? Like we've got a larger body, so it's easy for us to stay cool. Because the amount of blood volume that we have that comes with this larger body is different compared to our surface area. Whereas like, you know, like if you think about like how much space, how much blood can be trapped, you know, from here to here, you know, inside this arm, this tube that is my arm, right? The amount of blood that can be stored in there versus the amount of surface area, right? I've got more surface area because I'm an adult, right, than a youth would have. But I've also got more blood volume. The amount of surface area goes up by that much. The amount of blood volume goes up by that much. So because of that, I'm going to be much better at regulating temperature than like a kid will, right? And we need to be aware of this, right? This happens in our youths and our seniors, actually. But make sure you are always, always, always encouraging your youths to dress in layers, like a long sleeve shirt with a t-shirt with a jacket, right? That way, if they start to get, you know, if they start exercise and they start to get hot, and they'll get hot really quickly, they can strip the jacket off, right? And then if they start to get like, you know, too hot still, they can strip like, you know, another layer off, right? And then they can put that layer back on. This is a big deal. You do not want your youths getting too cold or too warm, and you don't want parents yelling at you, right? So a higher metabolic rate makes them heat up much, much, much faster because they have a higher surface area to mass ratio. And so that makes it very difficult for them to get rid of that heat, to vent that heat up. So because that is true, make sure you always make water available so that they can cool down. Make sure you always have layers so they can strip down. Make sure you always do a warm up and a cool down so that you ease into that temperature. Make sure that you cool down so you ease out of that temperature. And always, always, always allow for frequent water breaks with your youth clients. That's very, very important. When I was a kid, man, I was so bad at regulating body temperature. I remember like, you know, kids don't sweat very well either. There just isn't like a large capacity for sweat. But when I was a kid, I was a sweaty kid. I remember going to this place, it was called DZ Kids. It was like a Chuck E. Cheese's, but it was a little bit more like, there was like more stuff to like climb on. And like, it was a little more like bigger ball pits and like tubes to crawl through and stuff. And as a kid, I would just sprint through all that stuff so I could experience as much of it as possible. And like, my parents described this as like they would just like watch me go by and then like watch me go by, and I would just be doing like laps, like you know, like, and they would watch me get like redder and redder and like hotter and hotter and hotter. And I remember, you know, my mom would just like, it was always my mom, she would just like wrap me up and like hold me. She's like, sit, drink, and she would like give me water, and I'd be like, I was like crazy hyperactive in places like that, because it was freaking Disneyland to me. You know, that's a big deal. Make sure that you are getting plenty of fluids, and helping your youths regulate their temperature. So summarizing everything up, youths are going to demonstrate, you know, different exercise capacities, different hormone levels, different body sizes, different proportions. Those proportions are going to lead to coordination changes. Those body sizes are going to lead to temperature regulation changes. Hormonal levels are going to lead to strength and growth changes. And then they're, you know, because of all that, they're going to have different exercise capacities. They get the lower stroke volume, the lower blood pressure, and therefore the lower cardiac output. which means, we shouldn't be using the same fitness assessment data that we would normally use with our adults. That's why we're going to look at the 1 mile run or the half-mile run as a cardiovascular assessment in this version, rather than like the NASM where we look at, step test, Rockport walk test, things like that. They are metabolic non-specialists. They are not particularly good at anything. In summary, hormones create different, kind of talked about this, right? Hormones create differences in size and strength. Neural adaptations are where they're going to develop their strength gains. And like I said, they are bad at regulating temperature. Growth spurts are going to mess up their coordination. They're going to alter their body composition, usually in positive ways, but could possibly be negative. And it will reduce their flexibility, which is something we're trying to maintain. And their respiratory system will develop more as they get older. They will start to develop more of an anaerobic energy system because they'll have more cellular volume. And that is everything, guys. I know, like I said, it was a little bit shorter today, but hopefully got you kind of primed up and excited for the youth class.
That's it.
That's it. How you feeling?
Really good.
Cool. Well, all right, guys.
I probably won't work with kids, but
No, you're not interested?
but it's good to know.
Yeah. I would say be open to it just because it is like, fiscally, you can really get a lot of clients out of it. But
I
yeah.
love kids. I love kids. I have a daughter. But
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It was never really like something that I was super interested in, but like teens, I love working with teens. I think that's kind of fun. Like, it'd be really rewarding.
yeah, probably.
All right, guys, I'm kicking you out of here. I'll see you mañana.